Hello, everybody. This is Emmy Thomas, and I'm here with Bob. And we're going to start off this discussion, I guess, with the question I always ask, which is, what is it like to be you, Bob?
What's it like to be me? So I honestly suspect that I'm mildly on a spectrum, which is totally different from your regular neurotypical person. I do have similarities with someone with ASPD like you. First, we got kind of like the masking factor, which I want to talk about. I've kind of been doing it all my life, like with the facial expressions and tone of voice ratio, because I know in ASD that is, that's very common. Let's see.
Well, what is tone of voice ratio?
Usually, like, a lot of people with ASD have like this monotone kind of gesture. I've
Mm.
always kind of had that back in the day. I like to call it the Daria. Um,
Real quick, when you say ASD, autism spectrum disorder, is what you
yeah,
you mean? Okay,
yes,
so you say
technically that's
like okay, so like other people with or I'm sorry, other people with autism spectrum disorder, you have a monotone voice.
um it kind of varies, but usually that's, a part of it. Yeah, I've been told a lot in life, like, oh, you need to smile and you need to, have some more like cheer in your voice and all this stuff like that. And I'd never understood what anybody was talking about, like, because I'd lack like the facial expressions and I just like talk like however I wanted to, I guess. I don't know. I like to call it like my Daria phase or something like that.
Hmm.
People Daria a lot.
And but then you started masking the Daria.
Yeah, I guess so. Like I didn't, I don't know, as a kid, maybe, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe fifth grade, middle school, I started doing this thing where I just started like kind of copying the people around me, sort of with like what they would do. Like maybe I've been doing that all my life, I think,
Hmm.
because of course, like you lack the cognitive factor, which I think relates in that aspect. So something like that. And then oh gosh, what else is like a related subject? Right from wrong. Okay. Right from wrong socially. Yeah, that was a thing too. Um, I, oh gosh, what are some experiences? I don't know. They'd call it criminal autistic psychopathy. I looked this up on Google. Like I was a child and sometimes I'd take things that weren't mine. I just didn't care about some things. Like I'd take things or I didn't care about some things, or I was just very bold, socially. I would just say things. I didn't think about what I was saying because I'd give it to people straight up, nothing
Hmm.
behind it. It'd be very harsh, very cruel. Me, I wouldn't know that that it was, which is differentiates from somebody with ASPD.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so we got the masking, um, the social. And
Now the
so
masking,
also,
like, why did you choose the mask? This is kind of interesting to me.
okay, I don't know. It's just kind of like automatic now. I can't even help it. Yeah, it's like
But
a thing.
but like as a child, when you started to kind of look around you and start mimic, why? Why is it because like everybody else is? I mean, everybody else is mimicking too. I guess like when you're in middle school, like
Yeah.
a teenager. Um,
Mhm.
but do you remember kind of thinking like, oh, I better start doing this?
I don't know what was going on in my, train of thought, actually. I don't know what was. It was just kind of like automatic. Like maybe I thought in my head, obviously I'm different from everybody else around me. Obviously, I'm not trying too hard, is what I'd like to say, you know, because I was just pretty blunt, monotone, blunt face, and I just didn't care. So that's how it's similar. Um, and I just didn't want to do much, you know, with my body language like everybody else was, or it was just weird. And people,
Mhm.
and maybe it was people picking on me, like the kids picking on me, you know, that made me kind of like rise to that point.
Where you thought might as well just put in the minimum amount of effort or whatever to avoid some of this conflict like that?
Yeah, yeah, to a
Okay.
degree, yeah.
But you say now you do it without thinking and did you say, I don't mean to misquote you, but did you say you couldn't even stop if you wanted to?
Probably not. I mean, there's probably like a minimal difference at home.
Really? So even like when you're at home and the privacy of your own home, you're still masking?
Well, with my family or my friends, I won't make as much eye contact or something like that. That was a thing too. I don't know. When I when I would like do eye contact out in public, that's just like a little thing. I feel like somebody would like stare into my soul or something like that. So I'd like lack a lot of eye contact and be very monotone. So there's some of that like with my family. I just try hard less, I guess.
Okay, but you still feel like you have to make some eye contact. You have to.
Yeah, obviously. You know, when you're out in public, especially with what I do, you know, well, I'm not gonna say what I do in terms of like my job, but
Yeah, sounds
you know,
good.
pretty it's everything's pretty common, pretty simple, pretty simplistic, and it's like, you know, we don't think that these things are a big deal, but it's, you know, that's what it comes with.
It's weird how things can be a big deal sometimes, though. Like, kind of culturally, if you don't meet the cultural expectations of certain people. So this, I have a friend who, I don't know what, like he's older, and so he says this, like if I was a kid nowadays, then I would have some diagnosis and that I would be in some treatment program or whatever. But he says since that wasn't around when he was a kid, he kind of never got diagnosed, it never whatever, but he has so many stories about people getting angry at him
Yeah.
because of not doing things that were, like, expected, but things that are totally off his radar, and I
Hmm.
saw it, recently, just things where I'm like, "Oh, no, did he just cut in line in front of this person for some reason? Like, what does he think is
Yeah, yeah.
happening here? He doesn't realize it's a line?" And then I'll be like, "Oh, no." And then you could tell the person's really pissed and, like, just like, he ends up getting yelled at, like,
Yeah.
more than the average person would just from strangers. And then that's when you kind of realize, like, what like, okay, somebody cuts in front of you in line. What is the actual swing there? It's probably like what it if you're like, let's say you're waiting in line to go to a movie or something. The
Yeah.
actual swing is like maybe you get a slightly worse seat, like it's just one person cutting you in line, or cutting in line for the bathroom or something. I think most people reflect and think that it's a slight, like it's a personal slight on them, like I don't respect you enough to like respect your position in line. Like people take it personally, some of this stuff that isn't meant to be taken personally. So I kind of get what you're saying there about, being really needing to be careful about the way that you present to people, so as not to trigger them into having bad reactions to you.
Yeah. I guess that would be like more in my past per se, you know, yeah, as a child, teenager, whatever. And oh my lord, yeah, especially with my family being of the NPD and ASPD, they've, you know, obviously influenced me, but then my other side of the family was completely normal.
Mm,
So all in all together, I'd kind of toggle the both. Like I guess I'm this wholesome asshole.
Mm, mhm.
Especially with being on a spectrum, because I'd have some of their traits unknowingly, just found out about, who they are. It's obvious, but you have labels for people now. And it's like, yeah, I've had some narcissistic traits, yes, but I'm
Mhm.
not a narcissist and I'm not neurotypical. And so this just is kind of fun.
Well, it is interesting because, so for instance, my girlfriend Aria, her family has like such a different way of interacting than my family does. It's kind of like they resolve conflict in a different way, is a good way to put it. Like the way they
Yeah,
resolve conflict is to kind of like uh I would say kind of passive aggressive. It's just like a quick way to put it. But then the aggressive part of the aggression is so aggressive. Like it's meant to kind of, it's like I will let you kind of like invade my personal boundaries up to a point, and then I am going to assert my boundaries all at once. All the kind of past due boundary assertion is going to
yeah,
happen in this moment, and then that's going to be how they kind of deal with things, is like allowing like these little incursions, but then like blowing up at the slightest thing. Like, oh, you forgot to get crushed red pepper for the pizza. Now I'm really pissed and we might have to call the cops. That's
right.
like, to me, I'm like, what? So it is
Yeah,
funny because she is like a psychopath, like I am, but she just has also learned different things from her family in terms of like, this is how you communicate, this is how you resolve conflict, this is how you show love, this is how you drive down the street or whatever. Like all these little things that we don't realize are kind of familial conditioning, I guess, socializing to be that way. So
right.
that's really interesting. So your autism spectrum disorder, but you picked up some antisocial personality disorder traits and some narcissistic personality disorder traits.
I'd say to a degree, yeah, as a kid, but I was always a very wholesome person, so it wouldn't make any sense. It was just kind of like a either or way in some aspects.
What do you mean,
Um,
either or way?
no, I was a very wholesome person, especially internally. Like I would have, it comes with double the internal empathy. But I have a hard time. I would always have a hard time externally showing it in some ways. Especially if somebody didn't mean as much to me, I guess. I say that very boldly. I say things very boldly. Maybe if that makes sense. And then like the narcissistic way,
Well, to
I
back up a
don't
little
know.
bit. So what do you mean, especially if somebody didn't mean as much to you? What was the way that you'd treat somebody differently?
I don't know. Like if I saw, okay, who was really close to me, my family, my cousin, for example, like I'd go up to them and give them a hug and be like, yeah, yeah, that's my buddy. And like, cause I'd show like you know, like an
Oh,
extreme, like an extreme. And then if maybe that's with anybody, but it's all in depth, I guess. I really don't know how to explain it. And then with somebody else, it's just kind of like I could greet you in this way empathetically on the outside, but I don't know how. Um, and I don't really want to make eye contact with you. So it was like very drastic change.
uh-huh.
It was like there
So
was
like,
never no middle ground.
oh, okay. So what, for
Yeah.
instance, your example with the cousin, you don't actually feel that way about the cousin, or you do feel that way, but you just wouldn't express it that way.
Um, like feeling happy around him.
Yeah, so let's say you're
Oh,
like,
oh.
like giving a hug, like you wouldn't want to give the cousin a hug, but you give the cousin a hug because you feel like that communicates to the cousin, you're important to me. Like, so you do feel like the cousin is important to you, right? But
Hmm.
you wouldn't choose to communicate it that way. You choose to speak in the cousin's language, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
No, I guess in that aspect, it's fine actually.
Oh,
Like I
you're
like,
okay giving the cousin a
yeah,
hug. You're like,
yeah,
this
like
is nice.
my closer people. Yeah, I guess to
Yeah.
me, yeah, it's fine.
Uh-huh. Oh, so that's nice. So you don't have to mask as much. Like you honestly do just want to kind of engage with people in these
Hmm.
like closer ways when they're close to you. Interesting.
Yeah, I've learned that it's totally different from your masking, I guess. There's just certain things that I do mask. Yeah.
So how is it totally different?
I guess like because you lack empathy, then you have to kind of mask that in a way. With me, it's masking certain emotions. Oh gosh, this is so difficult to explain. Uh, oh Lord, I don't know, because I do get, I do have empathy. I do get happy and stuff like that. But if it's like, oh my God, this is like an extreme funny, or if it's all to like a spectrum with happiness and stuff like that, then I'll show it more drastically and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But like the middle ground is what I have to mask. I don't know if I'm making any sense to you.
Yeah,
Like
let
if
me
I'm,
kind of like describe how I feel, and then maybe that can help you be like, oh, this is how I'm different. So let's say somebody
yeah,
was talking to me about like, okay, childhood traumas. Now sometimes especially if it's like out of the blue or whatever, start talking about the childhood traumas. For me, I feel like inside I am not like, oh, this is a very sensitive moment that I should respond to with like love and grace or whatever. Like
right,
still like my initial thing is just like, like a rock for a heart or whatever. And it's not necessarily, I mean, it would be kind of like I see normal people do this too. For instance, with like homeless people or something, where they're just like, no, your suffering does not matter to me in this kind of moment. And it's not like I'm turning it off, it's just not there. Whereas I feel like normal people are like turning it off with homeless people, maybe. That's a controversial thing. And for sure,
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong, normal people who experience empathy, or just people who experience, effective empathy. So for me,
yeah,
like if somebody starts talking about childhood trauma, I'm just like, I have no reaction to it. If anything, I'm like, oh, okay. Does this mean we're gonna have to talk for like quite a bit of time? It's childhood
right,
trauma. It's more like, okay, are we gonna have to like schedule in some time to chat up about? That's what I'm thinking about is the logistics, And so, but I understand that I need a mask, with like most people, and so I'll be like, oh, your childhood trauma, oh, dang, that's so sad or whatever. And it's funny too because I have also had childhood trauma, so like, why?
yeah,
But I'm that way about my own childhood trauma. I am like, whenever I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, eating gutter oranges, partial starvation and
right.
like physical
Yeah, I
and
guess
emotional abuse. Sure.
I'm kind of that way in an aspect too, because I'm kind of numb to it, so I don't care, you know.
Hmm.
And I see people, I don't know, yeah, that's my thing too. I don't get like all sad or like have this I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I'm gonna talk to you about it, and I'm also gonna be sarcastic about it and joke about it.
Mm. But inside, you feel differently. You really are sad for the person because you feel that effective empathy.
Sometimes it's hard to tell my emotions internally too, which I forgot to mention. It's hard to like it's hard to tell sometimes. What would you call that? Alexithymia or something like that.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That comes with it a lot. Uh,
Psychopaths experience that too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so we got a little bit of that within the like the middle ground. So when I'm extremely mad, you'll definitely see it. If I'm extremely happy, you'll definitely see it. So I have a lot of trouble with the middle ground and the
I see.
masking, the alexithymia, or you know, I guess that's a good proper way to say things. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So the masking is mostly kind of a middle ground thing that you do. If you're like real happy, you're not going to mask. If you're real angry, you're not going to mask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I kind of have
Where
this blank face all the time, and people have suspected. They're like, I just think you're a psychopath. You have this, feeling. I'm like, no, my grandfather is, but I never knew what was wrong with me either. I got so misdiagnosed with so many things.
people have accused you of being a psychopath?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, probably jokingly. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I would get a lot of that, like, man, you just look the way you look in your face, you look so mad, the way that you talk. And it's like, I'm completely burned out from masking, but I can't tell them that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Man, the masking burnout is a commonality too.
Yeah, it's because I feel that physically, like in my face and everything like that. Like it's just it's exhausting. It's like going for a run or something.
Yeah,
It's like I can't automatically do the things that you people do.
right. Or like having to do your taxes, but every day or something, where you're like, oh, okay.
Right, right.
Yeah, I saw this tweet. Taxes is a good analogy, I think, especially for maybe Americans. I'm not sure how taxes work in other places, but I saw this funny tweet where it was like the government's like, okay, you owe us money, and if you don't pay us, you're going to jail. And then the other person responds like, okay, I'll pay it, but how much money do I owe? And the government says, guess. Winky face. But that's how it
Yeah,
feels. Is like, yeah, not only do I have to pay you the taxes, but I have to guess how much money you think I owe you. And that's how it feels to mask, is that you have to, like, somebody expects something from you, otherwise they're gonna get pissed at you. But you have to
right.
guess what it is and how
Exactly.
much, and like, oh, is that too much? Okay, great. You know?
Is this too much eye contact or am I staring into your soul? I don't know.
Exactly. So I could see how somebody maybe if you were making too much eye contact or something, they're like, "No, that's too much. You've guessed incorrectly." And so
I
now,
kind of Yeah. So if I get burned out or another way I'll do it is I mirror people a lot.
mm,
Is that a common similarity, like mirroring people sort of to a degree?
some people I think mirror people more than I do. Like some people psychopaths or psychopath adjacent or whatever. I don't feel like I do. That's as often. I feel like I mask for sure, but I don't know if like the mirroring thing. So sometimes like in a real superficial social engagement, like a cocktail party for work, I'll be like, okay, here we go.
Right.
Let's just mirror our way through this, especially since that's so many people and it's masking back to back to back. That it's like that is like an easy one to slip into and just be
Hmm.
like, sure, this is what we're doing right now.
Yeah. So I feel like with that, it makes me feel like some things aren't needed. Like a lot of things are unneeded, you know,
Like
because
what?
neurotypicals, I can't say specifically, it'll have to just come to mind naturally, but a lot of neurotypicals just expect things out of you. And I feel like, things could be a lot better if it was just left unneeded, maybe.
Yeah, you know what is a good one, I think, is all the stuff that got disrupted because of the pandemic. Like shaking hands or like hugging people you don't like or
Right, right,
whatever.
right, right.
Yeah,
It's
where
like I
you're
really
like,
don't.
why were we doing that in the first place? Think about what a handshake is. Gross.
Exactly, exactly. I feel that with people. Oh my gosh. So I feel like comedically, I had my emo phase in middle school and high school because I had that antisocial, uh, what do you call it? Point of view. I really did.
Oh, like
Um,
a misanthropic, like people suck.
yeah, everybody
Mhm.
sucks. Alternative. My hair was so many different colors. Yeah, so I was kind of in that circle and come to find out a lot of people with, spectrum, a lot of people with BPD, NPD, ASPD are in that group, and it would make sense,
Mhm.
to feel different and antisocial. That's what
Yeah.
I've learned.
Well, because you maybe all resent kind of the same thing, which is like you resent normal people. This is kind of a I don't wanna get canceled for this, but maybe I will. I saw some post and maybe it was just like a bum post that was, like, made up, but it was this person who is transgender female, right? Who was meant to go on a date with another woman, right? And so
Okay.
she was saying, she was at a restaurant, she got stood up because the woman she was supposed to be going on a date with, like met online or whatever, found out that she's transgender and was like, okay, I'm not going to go on this date with you because that was not her preference or whatever,
Yeah.
and then but this person is sitting there and she's like, I just stayed at the restaurant to eat, because I was like, well, I'm already here. And then she sees like these other three cisgender women sitting at the bar and kind of chatting, and like just chatting about like girl type stuff. And then it's kind of like the post title was like, I hate all cisgender women, and kind of said, like, I am just basically jealous of these people who naturally like bask in like the joys of femininity, I guess, kind of is a paraphrase.
Right. Right.
Without
Right.
me, and the author was saying, whereas I have to spend so much money and time and effort to even like come remotely close to participating in this feminine world, that everybody else seems to access, or the cisgender women seem to access so easily. But I think that's kind of like an overgeneralization. Is not every cisgender woman says is the joys of
Yeah, exactly.
femininity just like so
I
easily. I think that that is actually something that a lot of people struggle with, and like maybe even most people struggle with. Everybody seems to have kind of difficulties. So it is interesting, like, I even as we talk about masking, I know that normal people mask too. They have to mask too. It's not like everything is really easy for them. Although you kind of wonder, if it's difficult for them, why are they the ones policing it and
I know. Why
requiring
do
it
they
from
have
us?
this? I don't. Why do they have this setup shit, NPC shit that I'm not getting? They talk in riddles to try to get somewhere, which is, I mean, I don't know.
What do you mean
That's the
by,
way I
so
see it.
NPC, non-player character, but what do you mean with this? Like a normal people, like why do they, I'm gonna guess this. Is it like they small talk and they kind of make you run, like go through hoops or whatever
Yeah,
in social
yeah. So
interactions?
I've never liked small talk. I've never gotten small talk, and if I was talking to somebody, I'd always be unintentionally selfish because I was always talking about myself because I couldn't put myself in somebody's shoes, I guess. To
Hmm.
relate with somebody, I would talk about myself, to try to get something across. And that would, oh, wow, you're narcissistic, you're selfish. And it's like, no, I don't know. I'm talking about me because that's how I'm going to relate with you,
Yeah.
how I'm
Uh-huh.
showing that. So yeah, the
But
small talk, oh God, hate it.
yeah. Is it okay to say something that's a little bit about you, but mostly about just kind of what my impression of autism and the way that it operates?
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, my guess is that the narcissism, the accusations that you're narcissistic, come from a sense that there's like a rigidity there. And there is a rigidity there. That's why it's a disorder. It's like uh it's something that's like not ephemeral. Like it's
Yeah.
basically the same today as it was yesterday. There's something that's kind of there, and is like tangible. And that's what I
Hmm.
mean by rigidity, not necessarily like a rigidity of a personality, but just something like almost like you stub your toe like in the ocean, on a reef or a rock, and you're like, "Ah," so I think maybe that's the reaction they're getting, is that they suddenly bump up against something that they weren't expecting, and they're like, it's weird how, she's not like picking up on my totally unspoken nonverbal cues, whereas
Right,
like,
right,
of
right.
course that's what the disorder is all about or whatever. And so maybe that's
Yeah.
why they would react kind of really negatively to something like that. Is like, why is she still not, picking up on this? Or
Well, I mean, I do, but it's like, because I kind of got the gist now, but it's like I'm a trauma-based person on a spectrum. So, like, you know, the traumatized neurodivergence has an antisocial point of view as well. And so a lot of things are, especially with small talk, I feel like are unneeded. So I will just get annoyed optionally at times, like you're doing all this and I could care less. And, so I don't know, I have that aspect where I'm like, intentionally rude and then unintentionally. Because I do see the
okay.
logical point of view.
So I back up just a little bit. I felt like I was following you, but then you say sometimes you're intentionally rude and sometimes you're unintentionally rude. What do you
Yeah,
mean?
so it's very hard. Yeah, it's hard to tell. So like unintentionally, like with not getting, maybe I'll miss a cue, or maybe I will just, talk more inwardly about myself. So like maybe unintentional. And then there will
Uh,
be some times where I am intentional because I just see the whole logical kind of aroma and I'm like, nope.
hmm, hmm. And then you said something too. You said and I apologize too for not like maybe getting. You said a trauma based person maybe or something kind of like that. And you don't have to talk about your specific trauma if you don't want. But what does that mean? I have never heard that term before.
Well, I mean, a lot of people with, ASD don't have to go through trauma, but I did. So I mean, maybe that's why my perception is so much different. Maybe that's why, I'm much more different, why I had like my misdiagnosis.
Mm,
Yeah, so I was, undiagnosed all my life. I'm actually still undiagnosed, based off of all of these people coming out about them. I didn't even know being high functioning was a thing. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I was ignorant. I thought that people with autism were like completely disabled, or, they were just, so it's a lot of new things. But going back to the subject, sorry about that. Yeah, trauma based neurodivergence. It's definitely a thing.
okay, so I think I understand. Maybe you're saying that it's not just like so they're like different kind of categories of autism spectrum disorder that you might experience. Some people have had trauma in addition to autism spectrum disorder, and some people haven't had trauma. And the
Yeah.
people who have had trauma might present, in different ways than the people who haven't.
Hmm.
Okay. Like, what
Yeah.
are
So
maybe some of those ways that you might present differently, but also feel no pressure to respond to that?
maybe okay. So maybe it gives me that antisocial perception too, and not only because people in my family are of NPD and ASPD, but I growing up, I didn't know, but a lot of my friends did have narcissistic personality disorder, because they were very blunt and they just didn't care. And they do all these crazy things, a lot of teenagers do a lot of crazy things. But for me specifically, I just did not care, like, um, you know, I guess that excludes like anything in a violent way, though. Um,
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
So
I would go ahead.
so maybe it like led to like increased risk seeking, like,
Yes,
oh,
yes,
okay, I
definitely.
see.
Yeah.
And you said something earlier, I kind of didn't follow up on it. You said it's a thing, something criminal, autism, psychopathy or
Yeah,
something.
yeah. I looked it up on I was trying to research myself, like, my symptoms and everything. And then criminal autistic psychopathy popped up and it was like, I don't know, that's certain, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to look at the definition again. Hold on. I'm
Yeah,
actually gonna Google that.
I'll Google it too. Yeah, but psychopathy, I don't remember the root of it. Psychopathy. I think it just means kind of like any just means like mental issues, I think is the root. But then autistic it's like autism I thought is kind of like okay, like ought. I think the root is like okay, you're yourself, something with about like you're kind of like uh directed inward or something. Oh,
Hmm.
narcissistic personality and depression. With autism and Asperger's are highly ethical. Oh, really? But there could
Hmm.
be a combination
Yeah.
who do show lethal violence. I've described these as criminal autistic psychopathy. This is like we don't have to talk about it, but there is an interesting connection between autism and violence.
Yeah.
I
So
remember posting about something like that, and then like this was like a decade ago, over a decade ago, and people got so pissed at me for suggesting that. But then I like just posted. It wasn't like saying like to say that something exists does not mean it exists all the time, 100%. So I just posted somebody being like, okay, this is a mom who's talking about her autistic son who's violent, and it was just her story, and then people are like, no, the son must have been misdiagnosed, there's no way that an autistic person could be violent. And I thought
mhm.
that probably is not true, because just the natural variety of human the human expression seems
Yeah,
to include all sorts of varieties and different types of people. So I would really doubt that he was, it's just impossible to be autistic and violent. And I say this as I have a Down syndrome uncle and aunt, and they have like totally different personalities, but one of them is violent, and then eventually had to like go into like a different kind of home situation, because like the family member that was caring for him, felt unsafe, that like if there was any kind of pushback about what could happen in, the home situation, then it would lead to violence too frequently, however that ended up happening, who knows? But I think it's like odd for people to just assume, especially violent. I mean, kids are violent until they're like what, 16 or something? They're like reflexively violent. Like I've been punched
right.
in the face so many times by my nieces and nephews as babies, as toddlers, as preschoolers. Like they mostly stop, I would say, around like 5 or kindergarten punching me, but I think they still punch
Yeah,
their parents sometimes, reflexively hit or whatever. So it's like weird that people are like, no, violence is not a normal thing, where I'm like, you've all been violent in your life, I'm
yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah. I think people, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, there's like a level 1, 2, and 3 for autism, and I just want to mention that they want to like include ADHD in that factor now. Apparently, like it's all on a spectrum. Okay, I don't know if I'm wrong, but that's what they
ADHD is
want.
also on the spectrum.
That I don't want to get all my information from the internet. No, so but that's what they're claiming.
Huh,
It's all in
interesting.
correlation. So
You know,
yeah, it's
because my friend that I mentioned before, who like cuts in line or sometimes gets people angry at him, like I have often suspected that it's like an ADHD thing at least a little bit, but I've also been like autism spectrum. So it's interesting that there's possibly a connection. I think it's interesting. I think great that that as people learn, there's kind of a shift. I follow the psychopath researcher Abigail Marsh, who I'm going to promote this again. Psychopathy is the nonprofit that's trying to help psychopaths, their families, and promote research, better funding for research, etc. And so she's a co-founder of this nonprofit. And I saw her post something about Alzheimer's the other day, in which it was like just a screenshot from an article, where the article suggested that the reason why there's not a cure for Alzheimer's is because there's a bunch of academic bullies amongst the Alzheimer's researchers, and that like let's say 20 years ago there became kind of this dominant way of thinking about Alzheimer's, and that those people never kind of retracted or, like kind of adjusted to new evidence. And they just insisted that their theory was correct the whole time. And they were in charge of the conferences and stuff for Alzheimer's. And so they would only promote people who agreed, like to this orthodoxy,
yeah,
were like true believers as to this one dominant theory. And then they suppressed other theories that kind of popped up. And so for the past 20 years, it's just been like, this kind of collective like denialism in the Alzheimer's research. I was like, this is crazy to think that this happens. But I think it happens
right.
all the time too in psychology, where I think it happens in psychopathy, where there has been a dominant researcher who shall remain unnamed who has, like, has his followers and they shall remain unnamed or whatever. And they're kind of bullies about things, and like, no, it has to be this or whatever. So I think it's great when we kind of put that aside and stop thinking, yeah, it's got to be all this or all that. Again, like I said, my Down syndrome uncle who's violent, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not saying all Down syndrome people are, but like that just happens to be true. It's really, and it's really clear with him because he has the DNA, whatever, the extra chromosome. He's clearly Down syndrome and he is clearly violent, you know. So it's like there's no question there.
Yeah.
But I think when people start being like, "Oh no, this could never be," I'm like, "Oh really? It could never."
I feel like more with the spectrum of ADHD, it's misdiagnosed with bipolar a lot of the times, especially if you're high functioning, because that comes with the being overly stimulated. And then, the anger kind of just distributes into a meltdown, and something of that nature. There's too much going on socially, and I am pissed. So that was me as a child.
Oh really? So
Yeah.
you do have the ADHD because as you're saying this, my friend, I've often wonder, is this person bipolar? Because he seems to kind of go through mania and then like depressive episodes, but maybe it's the ADHD that's triggering it, huh?
I don't know about the comorbidity because they're both pretty similar. It's like that's why I kind of like have a theory that it's all on a spectrum. Like maybe that's the mid high end.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And everybody's just kind of masking without knowing.
What do you mean everybody's masking without knowing? Who's
Like
masking
like
without?
the more ADHD or type, maybe I could be wrong, but it's all pretty similar.
Hmm. So you were going to say something about what was it? Something autism, psychopathy?
Oh yeah, the criminal autistic
Yeah.
psychopathy. Yeah. Okay, what? Oh, I thought we were on that subject. We got off
Oh,
that subject. Or was there
yes.
anything more to add to that?
I thought you were going to Google it and tell us the definition.
Oh, yes, I did. Okay. Yeah, okay. Abstract, blah, blah, blah. This is coming out of a book or something.
Uh-huh.
Criminal autistic psychopathy, the mind of a serial killer. Okay.
Wow.
Um, it just has this little monologue here. The author proposes that there is a subgroup of autism spectrum disorders, which he calls criminal autistic psychopathy subtype, that is directly linked to cruelty, callousness, or dishonesty. Because I'm not saying my exact definition. Hold on.
Oh, I think that's good. I think that's a pretty good
Yeah, but
definition.
it's yeah. Um,
Yeah, I often wonder this stuff about like I mean, because I think that there are psychopaths who, as you say, they're people with autism that also have trauma and people that don't have trauma. And I think there are often things like psychopaths who often experience misanthropy and ones that don't, so it's like it doesn't surprise me that there would be, people with autism who would, be also antisocial. I do think that like antisocial personality disorder, I don't kind of like I actually prefer psychopathy in terms of like its definition, diagnostic criteria, etc.
right.
Because to diagnose something by just being like you behave, in a way that society doesn't like seems real suspect to me.
Yeah. It's all on a spectrum, and it's funny because I make these. Oh Lord, I don't know. I just kind of thought for a minute, like I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. So are you. Then there's the middle people. Is that a heaven or hell concept?
Oh, mhm.
I don't know. I thought comedically about that the other day. It's just funny.
Yeah. And
It's
I
like
mean, like, I think people assume, like, when you say stuff like that, antisocial personality disorder or whatever, you're kind of suggesting that everything somebody does is going to be antisocial. Whereas
right.
that's never true. There's never like a complete homogeneity to behavior where can you imagine? I mean, I brush my teeth. That's social, It's like weird, like I take out the trash, I whatever, help help people like who are like trying to get up the subway stairs or whatever, who have like a walker or something. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
it's just like a weird thing. Like it's more kind of like a morality blindness than it is like, okay, it's always antisocial. and of course, morality blindness is going to result in things that behavior that is antisocial. You can see it, but it's just weird that people in psychology, especially in psychopathy, and maybe it's because they don't have good funding, and maybe it's because of other reasons, that may or may not have been mentioned before. But it's
Yeah.
weird that you would diagnose it just based on kind of like behaviors and not have like any theory about like what causes those behaviors.
Right.
It's
I
like
can see where you're coming
diagnosing,
from.
yeah, it's like diagnosing something based on they have the sniffles or whatever, like somebody has like a runny nose. Well, so, a
Yeah.
million things cause runny nose, normal people have runny noses sometimes. It's really cold or something. They don't have to be like infected with a virus or bacterial infection to have these things. But yeah, there's almost like zero inquiry, I feel like, in kind of like the root, like what is the disruption that is causing these symptoms? Like what is the commonality or what are kind of the things? Like zero, I
Hmm.
guess. There's some stuff, and I think that some of the stuff, the research I like, I think also you can tell me maybe if this you feel like this relates. Like there's some evidence that there's like an attentional aspect to psychopathy too. Like psychopaths are better able to hyper focus, and because they're able to hyper focus, they're also able to compartmentalize and just stop thinking about something.
Yeah.
And so like in the hyper focus, they're so focused on let's say I'm so focused on getting my way that I no longer think about other people at all, kind of would be the idea. And I think that
Mhm.
there is like a lot of explanatory power to that too, like just it's an attentional thing largely. Like if you can think about your emotions, and when you're thinking about them, you feel them, but when you're not thinking about them, you feel totally disconnected to those emotions. Now,
So I feel
does
like,
it
yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
no, 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 no. I was about to ask, does that seem like anything that you can relate to?
Yeah, yeah, like you definitely, I feel like I have a superpower because you lack a compartment and, gain something else or gain higher intelligence, or put off something to the side and get on one thing completely. And that's what I want to mention my grandfather with. He works 7 days a week. He can get through just about anything because he can't, I mean, I say this kind of comedically. He can get through just about anything because he can't feel anything. That's my grandfather. He's very, work, 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 work.
Yeah.
So
And
that's.
that's another thing. If I think, you imagine like we have evolved to be a particular way. And here's a cool story about evolution in action. I guess anoles, which is a type of lizard, there are anoles who have evolved to live better in cities than the jungle. And so they've adapted to be able to walk up slippery surfaces better than jungle anoles, so like glass and stuff they can walk up. And there's like a couple other things too. I think they have like bigger thigh muscles which allow them to sprint faster, like
Yeah.
across the street or something. And so people were like shocked. They were like, oh, it's evolution happening right before our very eyes. But if you kind of think about evolution, it's exactly what you say. Like even if you're missing something, the in the missing something, you just experience things differently. It doesn't even have to be like a superpower in terms of an additive thing. Like in just missing something, like in missing empathy, there's like a lot of advantages actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You can be totally chill while everyone else is freaking out. There's like a lot of obvious, I hope, advantages to that. And, if you're trying to think about from an evolutionary perspective, like the strength of the entire human race obviously belongs in diversity. And it's always funny when people try to argue no. I got kind of accidentally tangled up in like a white supremacist Twitter thread.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh dang, now I keep hearing from people, but this one woman's like, oh yeah, black people are monkeys. And I'm like, so interesting that you could just like dismiss like such a big chunk of the human race. And here's like another funny thing. This is what I told them. I said, you know, amongst my siblings, we're obviously all full siblings, we're the same race, right?
Yeah.
There is such dissimilarity, you know, there's such like heterogeneity amongst my siblings. And like, why would you then think like we are genetically as close as you can get, right? Apart from like twins, you know, identical twins. And we have been raised the same way too, because we've been raised by the same nuclear, you know, household, whatever. And we grew up together, whatever. So we're about as close as you can get, and there's still such heterogeneity. But why do then people think that the races the same, that the races are so
Yeah.
homogenous we can just be like, oh, this race that and that race that? I mean, that sort of stuff is kind of crazy to me.
It
but
is. It is.
but yeah, the idea of like diversity is being a strength is like an evolutionary one, I think. So like, you know, like why would people be like, no, everybody has to be this way? But I guess it's,
Yeah.
is it tribalism or something that makes people want to get annoyed? Or maybe it just kind of complicates things. Like if my friend suddenly cuts in front of you in line, you know, suddenly you're like, oh, okay.
I don't know. People have just gone on with their cycle and what they're used to, and I don't think they think that anything is wrong with what they're doing, but there definitely is. See, with me, what I can relate with is that universal point of view too, because I do see like that all the time. Um, you know, the lack of sense of self, and so um, and because I don't have that, like, what do you call it? I'm trying to say this correctly. Well, I can't say it. Getting back on the subject of people just being, yeah. So I think that people need to get out of that cycle of like that judgmental, like neurotypical cycle bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like in their nature, with the social cues and in like literal judgmental type shit, like that they don't think that is, oh well, I'm just doing this, I'm just saying something about this person because of my own feelings, or you know I don't know how to interpret it.
Yeah. Yeah, they do seem to care a lot about what other people are doing with their lives that have no impact on them.
Yeah, especially on race too. I see a lot in the workspace, like, oh yeah, this Mexican person this, and they don't even realize what they're saying, and it just goes along with their socially, quote unquote acceptable things. And then um a lot of
Mm,
people insecure, you know and I guess I
yeah.
could feel that way internally with some things, but that's the big thing too. I was never insecure, on the outside. I didn't care on the outside. In middle school, I 2010, 2011, I started wearing these like yellow leggings before leggings were a trend, and they had a bunch of
Mm,
sparkles on them, and I thought it was the coolest shit ever. Walked into school with it on, and everybody's like, oh my god, what is this? And I'm like, well, I just don't care. Tiny stuff like that, people care way too much.
yeah. That is yeah, that's funny. Your yellow leggings are like enough to like just like rock people's world.
Yeah, yeah,
Like wow, that's pretty you know, high level of sensitivity of you know, if that's rocking your measuring devices. But you said something kind of earlier about sense of self. Uh
yeah.
what how do you experience sense of self?
um it's very hard for me to like articulate my words and distribute them like in a like automatically, but um with certain things, my sense of self, I you know what, actually I've always felt like I didn't have one, like And maybe that's more like trauma based as well. But I know a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people with ASD normally just lack that sense of self. And I could be wrong. I don't want to get yelled at, but oh gosh, how do I explain this? With my trauma and having to, mirror people in relation to masking, maybe gave me like an unintentional, like, you know, different changes of personality within each person. And it's not like that anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
know who I am. I know that I have qualities. I know what I like, but there's just no neurotypical set, you know, I'm this person because I have to do
Yeah.
like all of these things and mask and basically be human 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it seems like I mean, I wonder if this is maybe like a good analogy for normal people to think about this. Like if you are constantly being reinforced in a particular thing, then, it probably is going to be stronger. Like let's say I live in a place where there are military families, and they tend to move a lot, right? And so even if they've spent some time in a particular location, they may not feel as Californian as I feel Californian, who has had it reinforced, year after year after year because, I've lived here so long and didn't really have that many disruptions to it. So in
Yeah.
the same way, like um, a normal person, like when they're even in small talk, they are self-expressing, they are
Mhm.
saying part of them. And if you are never kind of self-expressing when you're doing that, then it makes sense that you would be maybe not have the same sort of sense of self as they would, like I remember one of my music professors said, kind of like derogatorily, I think, said, like, if you guys all say that music is your life, but if music really was your life, you would make it your life. And I think he was kind of suggesting, like, you'd make every part, your social experiences music. You'd make your romantic life music. You'd make your religious life music. You'd make your intellectual life music. You'd incorporate it into every single aspect of your identity, and it does seem to make sense that, yeah, you probably would be better at music if you did do that. But if
Mhm.
you mask, you don't really get that because you've invested so much time not just in your own sense of self, but in another self that you present to the world, in another kind of thing that doesn't really have anything to do with you. It's just like um, like a skin suit you wear or whatever. Uh
Yep.
that's interesting. But you said something about did you say that you think that it's common to have sense of self, kind of a different experience of sense of self in the autism spectrum disorder people?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I do have friends, who are just, they've had, kind of like a normal life and who are on a spectrum and they kind of lack that too. And I say a lot of it is from like the automatic, like universal perspective and the masking and I like this and I like that and I like this. Like I'm pretty much cool with this person and that person. I'm not really with any groups and or stuff like that type of deal.
Huh. This is interesting. I almost wonder, I've been thinking about this a little bit recently because I was thinking about how probably what I would consider kind of high functioning psychopaths are probably, my guess would be, just my prediction, and I would bet a Chick-fil-A meal on it. That's how comfortable I feel about my prediction. And I'd love to be proven either true, false or correct about this. But my guess is that the more high functioning you are, the less of a sense of a self you have as a psychopath. And it probably does have to do with the facility and amount of time that you're masking. Like I would
Yeah.
imagine that the lower functioning psychopaths, to the extent that they experience dysfunction and, suffer as a result of their disorder, it's mostly probably as a result more directly of the disorder itself, of the criteria, your impulse problems, your attention issues, your, et cetera, et cetera. And that the higher functioning psychopaths probably they suffer more from the masking, from kind of from the way that they have accommodated their disorder. Like they've learned to do particular things, and those things are kind of more maladaptive than I think they think. They pick them up in childhood. I'm just going to start masking, but masking has its own problems, I guess is what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
it's not sustainable to mask to the extent that your average successful psychopath is masking, probably, in my opinion. That's just my guess, my prediction.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like the more higher you are up on like both ends of the spectrum, the more it's kind of like that way in an aspect, but not. So it's just similarities with each end.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, all in all, it just sucks to be human.
It certainly has
uh,
its challenges.
yeah, yeah, especially dealing with um having to deal with neurotypicals, and I just that's what I found out, because I do have, besides my toxic family who is on that end, I do have a friend of ASPD. And then a lot of my friends are on a spectrum. So it's like I kind of got that situated, and I realized that you other people are the problem, and I got to do way too much with you.
Mm.
And it's just so, that's what I've come to the conclusion with.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah. It's,
Well, I think I've said this before, like on, a discussion, and it really kind of changed the way I thought about things. Is often people do not realize, if they are in the status quo, how much things are catered to them, like there are special accommodations to them all the time. And the phrase that kind of changed my mind a little bit, or like made me think differently about things, is to the blind, street lights are a special accommodation to the sighted. And it makes sense.
yeah,
We have all this infrastructure that like ignores the needs of blind people, but only like takes into consideration the needs of the sighted people, and special accommodations, like why do you need lights? You don't need lights. You can walk around in the darkness. We do. Like why can't
right,
you?
right.
Like it's interesting. But then yeah, I was about to
Like you
say
can
something
very
else, but
much, um, yeah, like, sorry if I interrupted.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, like the literal unneededness in some things, I guess. Um, like you could very much, not have to talk about somebody else's personal life or drama. These are social things that you need to put aside, a lot of
Yes.
egotistic things, maybe. Like, I don't know. Uh
Yes, the gossiping, the social shaming, like why are we so caught up in like what other people do with their own lives?
yeah, and defeat reliance. That's what I've learned too. Because I do have this friend that has ASPD. So that's, you know, I get better advice from people like you, honestly. It helps me thrive in life, to kind of get, surpass neurotypical things and kind of understand more about, what's going on socially, etc., which I've kind of surpassed, but it's very
Hmm.
interesting. Um,
It
yeah,
is kind
it's,
of funny. Speaking about this kind of advice. So I spent some time in like New Jersey recently, like several weeks. And then while I was there, I was like, what is the deal with the litter? There's so much litter everywhere. And I was house sitting for a friend, right? And then I kind of like was talking to the friend about it, like, hey, what's going on? And then I started cleaning up some trash and I set up some signs that said do not litter. But I kind of realized that the thing that was causing a lot of the litter is that in this particular municipality in New Jersey, they do still manual trash collection. So you just put trash out on the side of the street and they pick it up. And people aren't even using trash cans. They're just using whatever. So it's like
Yeah.
they don't have lids, like the trash is just blowing, they'll put like just a cardboard box out there filled with trash, and the trash is
Right.
like blowing out of the cardboard box in the wind, and like getting tipped over or something, and nobody ever cleans it up. And so it's like, because there's manual trash collection as opposed to like I guess the arm, like where you have the mechanical arm, and you have to use a particular type of trash can, and if it's not in the trash can, they don't collect it. Right?
Yeah, that is so stupid.
Yes, yeah, so it's stupid, but I was like, "Man, how can you kinda change this though?" Because, like, these
Yeah.
kids, I would see kids, like, walking, just in, like, I mean, piles of litter, like, just, like, everywhere, like, every block had at least, like, 5 bags worth of trash that could get collected, 5 big trash bags, just everywhere in this particular municipality. And then I thought, I'm gonna call, Bank of America, which had a branch in this kinda neighborhood, and then be like, "Yeah, I'm really surprised that there's a bunch of litter on your property, but so there's everywhere, it's at the Walgreens too, it's at the it's at the, like, Arco gas station, it's everywhere in this particular
Yeah.
location." And I thought, but Bank of America probably, like, intuition told me Bank of America cares, they'll do something about it. So I called them up, and they did. They called me back and they're like, "We're so embarrassed about this, yes, they do have, like, someone who comes in, like a service that cleans up trash every week, but they're gonna have to do it more frequently." And I thought, this is how you do it, is to get the corporate America involved, and be like, "Hey, you're not being good community members, Bank of America. You need to come in and kind of clean up your trash." They'll get so pissed off of having to spend so much money cleaning up trash because this particular city won't do it, that they'll be involved in local politics. And eventually, people get like so pissed, the businesses, because they'll be required, people will want them to clean up their parking lots and stuff. This is fingers crossed. Like eventually the businesses will be the thing driving the social change, hopefully, in this
Yeah.
municipality. Right, and so I was kind of explaining this to my friend that I was house sitting for, and she's also involved in a lot of kind of like, causes, community-oriented causes, and I think she was just kinda surprised that I had, like, such, like, this Machiavellian view about how this was gonna change, and how, like, just like this idea about leverage, like, you can clean up trash every day on your block, but that won't change. You have to call Bank of America. You kn
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, just kind of you could be using the same amount of, like, energy and things that are going to, like, snowball effect, and, I don't know. I do think that that's one nice thing about being a psychopath, I guess, and talking to psychopaths, and sometimes I have like kind of mind blindness about things, and I do like to talk to other psychopaths and kind of get their idea, because they have like better perspectives about certain things than I have found, or at least it's my preference to get their
De-
perspective about certain
definitely.
things.
Yeah, you guys are helping us, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and, there's so many shared things too, about, like, normal people and stuff. Luckily, I've never really experienced misanthropy. That would be a little bit hard. I do feel badly for people who, I mean, I'm naturally kinda charmed even by the normal people. Like, I always
Hmm.
think they're each so, you know, different in kinda nice ways. It's nice to explore them. It's like, opening Christmas presents to learn more about the different people.
Right,
So
right.
I feel really lucky to have that kind of quality, that characteristic.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I guess with my grandfather, when you say like different people, as a kid, he would joke around. Oh my gosh, this man is like Probably like mid, low tier on the spectrum. But he would have a lot of bottom barrel humor, a lot of sarcasm, a lot of digs. And as a child, he would kind of, project that onto me and um have this like stereotypical humor. That's what I like to call it, stereotypical humor. And it was just like like people were funny, like, and I didn't know why at first, but just everybody was hilarious. Like, look at this man. He's, he's dressed like this and he looked like he would go kill somebody, or he looked like he's sitting in this Chevy truck and smoke a fat one or something like that. And that was, it was just him though making fun of, people who weren't like him, the neurotypical
Yeah.
aspects. Yeah, like people are John from the CVS or Sally from Walmart. So I was kind of exposed to that type of humor because yeah, the different people would come into the, humor aspect.
Yeah. And it probably helps to, if you had a choice between like being really frustrated with people who kind of impose on you so much, force you to behave in certain ways and force you to mask and force you, otherwise they like socially sanction you, like that's the penalty if you don't. It probably helps to view those people with humor rather than like resentment.
Right. Yeah, I would say so. Um, where is my train of thought? Because I was definitely going to say something. Yeah, it would be amazing if, these people could understand, and treat me accordingly to my brain functioning. I feel like we need to get to that part too, and especially on your end.
Hmm.
Maybe if that's something that you'd like to happen, because there's something, especially the communication part. Hey, you didn't get back to me. You're not consistent. There's so much things socially that I would just like to, stop. you know it's like especially consistency with friendships. I've, a lot of friendships have failed for me, a lot of relationships, because the communication, oh, you're not showing that you care in this way, and it's
Mm.
all like unintentional. um or needing breaks from people. Like, I'm not consistent with all my friends. They want me to talk to them every single day, or do this with them. Oh, come out to this place. Well, I don't want to be social. I don't like huge gatherings. It gives me anxiety. Optionally, there's a lot of things optionally that'll bother me. Getting overly stimulated. There's too much going on. You know, um,
Yeah.
yep. It's
My girlfriend says that I attract a certain type of friend
yeah,
that like probably like, maybe not autism spectrum disorder, like technically on it, but like, have some let's say like social struggles, social anxiety, have something kind of where, socially they don't kind of match up with what most people expect, I think. And so, yeah, they do experience kind of problems because they don't fit the mold, I guess, that people are expecting of them from a friendship, from a this, from that. And so my girlfriend kind of suspects that the reason why I'm like a magnet for them is because I really don't care if they don't call me for like a few months and then are like, hey, let's go do this or something. It's like, that's fine. And even every once in a while, they'll kind of try to boss me up about something like, "Oh, you showed up late," and I'm like, "Well, I did have a flat tire." I
right,
really
right.
didn't want a flat tire, but in fact, I did have a flat tire, or I was stuck here, or, like this unexpected thing happened or whatever. And they'll like sulk maybe like a little bit for like a week or two or something, but eventually like come back because I think there is something nice about, and maybe this is a thing too, like maybe maybe like the same way that we kind of think neurotypical people shouldn't expect us to act like them. Maybe it's okay to not expect them to act like us. You know,
Right,
just to
right.
know, hey, maybe that friendship wasn't worth having then, if that person is not okay with, me like going off the grid for like a couple months and then coming back on when I feel like I'm ready to again.
Yeah, because for me, they see that, oh, you have a motive and you only come around when you want something. And no, but then yes at the same time, because it's like, I mean, I got burnt out and I'm kind of capable, I'm available, and this is the time when I want to do something on my time. So, you know, it's just you have to keep up with that consistency. You have to keep I don't understand.
Hmm.
Um yeah, so there would be a lot of miscommunication, and then from my end it was like, oh, this person just, shows up when they want to, available on their time, and doesn't want to do what I want to do. So, oh god, especially going out to, like, I don't know how you feel about this, but bars, um concerts, what else? It's a lot of anxiety, red flags, like
Hmm.
no's. So I'd love for things, for people to just keep it simplistic at times too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think about it in a way too. Like, I'll have this emo aspect. Like, really, we're gonna go to a bar, we're gonna drink. Well, we could drink at home. We could very well, buy something, buy a
Hmm.
few beers, sit down, watch something. Why do these other people matter? I don't want to get, engaged with unneededness. I don't need somebody hurting me, etc.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense. And frankly, I don't want to meet any new people, especially coming from there at that exact location, because I know it's trash. So I kind of just think about all these things and a lot of aspects. Like, I will overthink myself and distribute a whole monologue of the entire situation, which they won't do. They're like, "Oh, you're crazy for that." But it's like, I always think ahead and I always think about the entire situation and what comes with it. And that's why I do not want to do this with you. But
Yeah.
you don't think about that.
Yeah. Or for them, it's like they don't pay attention to it, or it's not like a downside. Maybe it's a feature to them
Yeah.
that, they're surrounded by people that, as you say, are trash or whatever. They're
I
like,
don't
yeah,
know. Yeah.
that's what they're looking for. They're hoping something's gonna like stir up or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, you'd have the aspect not to care. And me too, in ways, but it's like, it's an example. A lot of things aren't worth it. And I like to keep it simplistic.
Yeah.
There's a lot better things. People don't think about that either. There's a lot better things you could do. You cancel out the social, and for me, that leads me to, going out in nature, exploring. I like doing a lot of that stuff. I feel like we as people and humans in general need to explore more things, and um, you know, it's kind of a factor
Yes.
aside from, like, your base. Let's do this, and
Yeah.
yeah,
I agree. I do not find things like that fun. But I love nature. It's like, let's go bike riding or something. Let's do something else.
definitely. I also watched one of your interviews. So I did watch some of your videos about, like, the bike riding incident when you stole a bike.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. I've done something like that too.
Oh, really? And then, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't mean it to be malicious. I think that's what people are always surprised. It's not like I was like, I want this person to worry. In fact, I thought they weren't going to worry. And I was really surprised that they were like, our bike was missing for 2 hours. I'm totally freaked out. I'm going to go confront my neighbor. That seemed like a weird thing to me. But I guess the weird thing is stealing the bike.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that just goes to show like our expectations are different about what's normal or weird.
Yeah, because for me, I just, yeah, that's literally the similarity is like it would happen more as a kid. Like I just be like, oh, I didn't really see anything wrong with this. I wasn't breaking it. I just wanted to use it. It was right there.
Yes.
Um, I'm trying to really think because, if I don't see it now, I'm gonna think of it later. I have a habit of that.
Uh-huh.
Um, trying to think what else. I don't know. Yeah, but just a lot of oh, I didn't know this was wrong because this seems okay logically or for me unknowingly, something like
Well,
that.
too, the funny thing about this is in church, like sometimes I help out with like the toddlers, like there's like it's called nursery. You can like Google this Mormon nursery or whatever. So the toddlers, and there's like a very strong norm on at that age that even if they bring their own toy in, that they have to share it. And so I think it's really funny that there is that strong norm in preschoolers that we all expect them to share their toys, but once people are adults, then they're like, "Nope, you can't share my bike." There's that's the
Yeah.
worst thing you could have done to me is borrow my bike for a couple hours
Hmm.
without asking. I'm like, okay. I think I did try to ask too. I think I knocked on the door, but they weren't there. They like worked during the day or something.
Yeah, and then I'd be hypocritical because I didn't want anybody playing with my toys, but adults would expect that, share with your
Hmm.
friends. Well, in my head, it's like, no, they're gonna mess it up, and I don't like people touching my things.
Yeah.
It's very because it's mine. I never got that either, so I feel like I have so many theories, but it's like people who lack certain compartments can kind of see clearly in certain ways, whether it be logically, and then you just have like this neurotypical aspect where it's like we keep evolving to where there's more social constructs and we're thinking of ways to how to make things work. And
Hmm.
it's you know I feel like as a 2022 or 2023 with other things we've just gone way too far, um with a lot too, and just the unneededness.
Hmm. Yeah, like why does it bother people so much? Like that other people, I don't know, think disagree with them politically. I got in this weird discussion with this person who was trying to like torch me, trying to burn me on Twitter, I think, by saying because I said something about like, oh, it would be good to have like bike lanes or something. Because I have gone to like different cities. Amsterdam's a really good example, where
Yeah,
like they have really great biking culture and I like to bike. And so that'd be cool or whatever. And like we spend so much money on cars, maybe we could spend some money on bikes. And this person was like trying to burn me by being like, well, too bad we don't spend any money on you and bikes. And I was like, like I'm
yeah,
so burned or whatever, but like, why are you trying to troll me about this? Like, why is that a thing? Like, why do we
right,
care? Why does he care that I like bikes? Is he triggered? Like he was like, you guys should just like join the car gang with the rest of us. And I'm like, is there a car gang? What is this?
yeah, yeah, like
Like what?
they have their own set dead end thing, and
A
I've
bunch
never.
of weird gangs about like every little thing. I'm like, I don't think there is a car gang. Is there like a my favorite color is yellow? Are we like the yellow gang, And we're like purple,
Right, right,
purple's
it's
the
just
worst color.
right, it's just digs at little things like
Yeah,
it.
like why? Why is it such a big deal to you guys? And then to like interact with people about that in like weird ways like that, like why? I don't get it.
No, nope, nope.
Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else? Do you have anything? It's been like a little bit. Do you want to wrap up? Do you have any like closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. Closing thoughts. Um,
If you don't,
I don't
no
think
problem.
I don't
No
like
pressure.
maybe Oh, if you were trying to close this, which I'm not sure, so I have to ask.
Uh-huh,
Like I
yeah, I
did
am trying to
want
close
like
it.
okay. So I mean I did want like a tiny bit of your advice too. And then
Oh, okay. Do you want the advice like on the recording, or would you prefer to do the advice on a not recording?
oh, we can do it on the not recording since we're trying to close it. So yeah.
Oh, I'm not
Um,
trying to close it for any real reason, but like, does the
okay.
advice involve like kind of personal details, or are you okay having other people hear the advice?
Oh, we could hear it.
Okay, they can hear it. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So what would I don't know. You could say it in any way. What would your advice be with, somebody with somebody with ASD in a neurotypical world and, just especially dealing with narcissists. I don't know if you can kind of give advice on that part.
Yeah, I would say I don't know about the second part, but let me think about it as I kind of answer the first part. I think the first part is sometimes we think, hey, we really have to um, differently in response to these like social punishments that we receive. But I'm
Mhm.
kind of like, and me too, when I saw my friend cut in front of the line, I was like, I need to tell him, like, hey, you cut in front of this woman and resolve this. But I thought, no, I don't need to get involved. And if she wants to do something, that's up to her, And so I think kind of like this idea of just being process oriented, like just doing the thing that you're going to do no matter what. I think is good because as we were kind of discussing before, I do think that a lot, especially for the higher functioning people who are masking quite a bit, who are passing and masking quite a bit, that like
Mhm.
the yes, you get fewer kind of bumps and bruises from your disorder, but you're going to get more like it's maladaptive. We think it works, but it doesn't really. It's like something that's going to come back to like bite us, right? Like we're going to have lived a half a life, according to what people think of us, rather than just being true to ourselves. So I
Yeah.
am kind of a big proponent of just being true to yourself, and I do think that there's is like quite a bit of difficulty that comes from that. But I feel like it only lasts about 2 years.
Yeah.
People get pissed at you, you'll lose some friends, people will kind of be like, I never knew you felt this way. There's going to be some like tumult, right? Because you both basically just been like putting that off. You've been putting off the confrontation about that. You've been putting off the confrontation about this. And so then once you stop putting it off with the masking, the confrontation will come,
Yeah.
but then once it comes, then it just kind of like goes away. Then people just expect that that's the new normal, right? There is so much value to the status quo. So you just have to kind of get through at least the first 6 months, and then it starts getting easier. And so if you can
Mhm.
do that, I think that's good. I think it's good to be, like, more truly yourself. I think you'll be happier. I think, there's only so much we can do via willpower, and the fewer tasks that we require willpower, like, in our life, the list of tasks that I need willpower for, the shorter that list is, the better. Right, the more consistent we'll be. I think you might find that if you don't have to mask around your friend, maybe you do want to see them more frequently, or maybe you do end up communicating more frequently. Like maybe it doesn't have to be so much alone time or quiet time or decompressed time or all this stuff. I think that the masking is doing much more harm than we realize.
Yeah.
It's kind of like cigarettes, like in the 40s or whatever. They thought they like soothe your T zone.
Yeah, especially with
We're
the
tr-
burnout too.
Yes, we're trying to
Yeah.
soothe the T zone, and it's just giving us lung cancer, right? We think it's a
Hmm.
solution, or like what was it, the thalidomide, right? With those babies who had the birth defects or something. It's one of these situations where we think it's the cure for what ails us, but actually it's worse. The cure is worse than the disease itself type situation. That's how I feel about masking. With
Yeah.
regard to narcissists, I would say now I have kind of an idea. You just got to like get off their radar
Hmm.
as much as possible. Because a narcissist, in my experience, the problem with them is that they see other people as an extension of themselves. and I think they have a tendency to, kind of personalize everything. So like maybe this is just based on my experience of my dad who's like narcissistic or narcissist leaning, and he's also a hoarder, right? So when I kind of
Yeah.
realized like, oh, the reason why he doesn't care, like one time he gave away one of my musical instruments, and I was like, you just gave it away?
Yeah.
Like that was worth like $500. Like what happened or something, but he won't give away, like a little piece of plastic that he thinks is his, because that's a part of his identity. So it's
Yeah.
like once you realize that if you are kind of within their orbit, they will try to assert control over you because they see you as an extension of themselves. Then like the key is just getting out of their orbit, just get off their radar, just make it seem like in this very just kind of like, I don't know, just try to kind of sneak past them, try to like not engage them about things, just kind of avoid, not avoid them necessarily because you don't want to trigger them to think that you're avoiding too, but just be like just just zero engagement from you, like really like they can almost like get no engagement. And
Yeah. I can just
and
like
care less
inter
about them too, whatever they do, sure, that's just, like, up to them. I have no part of that. Yeah, as much as you can kinda get, I mean, I'm trying to think of, like, is there a better way to put it? I keep repeating, "Just get off their radar." Hopefully that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it does. Just
Okay,
like
yeah.
really, really, really quick. I'll try to make it as quick as possible.
No,
Like
no, go take as much time.
I can kind of get past my mother and work with her because I know how she works. She's very weak one. And the people in my family, they don't really count as much. But people at work, that I have to deal with, my coworkers,
Ugh.
I'd say there's this malignant older lady, and she'd just make these over, she like do the most with her facial expressions, a head nodding, moving my jacket on the other side of the what's it called? Uh other side of like where
The
the coat
workspace.
the rack,
Yeah.
just like stuff like that, and just hot, very hot and cold, and it's like she doesn't even know my brain functioning. Nobody at work does. I'm very passing, but I try my best. I do my job accordingly, and I think that's maybe like okay, in her head, maybe I'm wrong. You're a female, you don't seem to mess up because you're doing your job, and you're respectful and very, there's nothing behind your words, you're very honest and stuff like that, and that triggers me. I don't know.
Mm, yeah. Man, it's always so hard when you share something in common with people, like, they perceive that you share something in common, like female or something, then they're like, "Now I really expect you to act the way that I expect you to act." And that if you don't, then they'll boss you up. I don't know
Yeah,
how
I
to
think
do
it's
something. I mean, mostly probably just, again, ignore or whatever, like, um, it kinda reminds me of a situation I'm experiencing right now where this person, like, kinda came on, like, really heavy to me, like, personally was like, "Hey, like, I really wanna be good friends and let's hang out and stuff." And then, I texted them and was like, "Hey, do you wanna hang out or something?" And then no response. I'm like, "What?" Like, but you just
yeah,
kinda have to be like, almost like that's completely on them, I guess, is, like, the best way that I deal with it is, like, okay, that's completely on them, because if you kind of, like, let even, like, a morsel of your brain, like, even a brain cell dwell on what it potentially means that they're, like, moving your stuff around or whatever,
yeah.
trying
Yeah,
to understand the reasons why, because it's just inside their brain is such, like, this labyrinth of insecurity that you could never understand. That, I guess that's
Mhm.
another thing is like with narcissism, I think I used to try to understand and predict. And then once I just realized that it's basically just like, I don't know, like as random as, I don't know, you just can't predict it. And there's no causal connection. You can try to think, "Oh, this happened because of this," or whatever. And here and there, maybe, like you'll think, "Oh, maybe that's true or something." But then also like who cares? Because there's just so much about them that's unpredictable and like unknowable even to themselves. And any little thing just kind of sets them off so badly. I one time read that like in when they make iPhones and other like smartphones like in China or whatever, the even like a speck of dust is enough to just like ruin the iPhone. So they have to be so
Yeah.
careful. But that's how they are, you know, like a speck of dust. And it's like you're like, well, this phone should work or whatever. You get frustrated and you have these expectations. But with them, it's just best, I think, to be like, no, they're basically like a 2-year-old.
Yep.
And there's no logic to what's happening in there. It's just totally like I'm the target today just because, you know, they got a speck of dust in their coffee this morning or something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like it because I can see very transparently. So I'm like, this is all of this is just unneeded, and I'm just trying to figure out how to just because I don't talk to them. I barely do much. I do ignore it, but I'm like, is there anything else that I need to do to kind of just further this to be like quit? Is
I
it's
mean,
very malignant.
yeah. You could keep your eyes out for like an opportunity to like anonymously get them fired. And if that ever happens, if you ever think, "Hey, this might be an opportunity," then you can, like, write me back
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, does this sound," but I usually think, like, if you can kind of I've gotten to the point even with my dad that I've gotten so off his radar that I don't mind him. He doesn't trigger me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's possible too. If you're able to get like so off the radar that they kind of see you, you know, stop seeing you as like a part of them, then you just like stop becoming a target too. Like I don't know how you could possibly do that with this person. I'll keep kind of thinking about it. You know, like ways like where you just kind of differentiate yourself so much like, "Oh, that's not at all what I would have thought." Or, you know, like, "Interesting, you have such good ideas," or something, and kind of make
Right.
it seem like maybe slightly devalue yourself so they don't want to think of you as an extension of themselves, because you've devalued yourself, you know,
Yeah,
like
I do that a lot. Yeah, especially like with my mother too. I'm like, well, you're doing all that because factually that's coming from a personal problem. It's unneeded. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Like a dummy
it's
like
all
me would never have realized that, you know, you're so different than I am because I'm a dummy and you're smart. Like stuff like that, I think helps the narcissist to not see you as an extension of themselves.
right, right, right. Oh, yeah.
Anything else? Any other closing thoughts?
Uh, I don't think so, but yeah, just dealing with that, getting my foot in the door there will kind of help me further myself into like psychological stuff. And this interview does help too. I appreciate you and your advice and, me actually distributing things for the first time. So I'm trying to do all that on my TikTok, but, you know, as I
Mhm.
get there, I'll be more public, with my name and who I am and stuff like that. So this definitely does help. Does help
All right.
100%.
Well, I appreciate you so much for chatting me up, for sharing your own personal experiences and your insights, knowing people with antisocial disorder and being autism spectrum disorder yourself. Some of the similarities you've seen, or you know, ways that you can kind of see connections or disconnections too.
Yeah,
It's been
yeah.
really interesting.
I really want to bring light to that, light to both ends of the spectrum, and say that they can help each other. Definitely, definitely. So I've come to the conclusion with, and I want to do shed more light, as I continue my growth within social media and all that stuff.
Well, awesome. Uh, I'll chat you up soon.
All righty, thank you so much.
No problem.